This video is over Digestive and Excretory Systems, Unit 9, Learning Targets 19 through 22. What is the function of the digestive system? Well, its primary function is to take food, break it down to its essential parts, the nutrients, and have those absorbed into the bloodstream so the body can use them, and eventually gets rid of solid waste. So food there's lots of different kinds of nutrients that your digestive system can process. We've learned about a lot of these over the course of this year. One important nutrient is carbohydrates. You need carbohydrates in order to get energy. Carbohydrates, again, are the primary source of energy of all living things. It's most readily readily available source of energy. This is how your body, glucose, for instance, is a carbohydrate, and your body uses glucose to do cellular respiration. And if it's not glucose, then your body can break it down to where it's similar enough to where it can process those things. So again, here's some pictures of glucose, a simple sugar. Remember, sucrose is sugar that's two parts, glucose and fructose, and your body can split that in half. And then a starch is just a big chain of glucoses, and your body can break those up and use those as well. And here's a picture of cellulose, which is interesting because your body cannot get rid of cellulose because the bonds are a little different, and so you usually end up passing cellulose. This is like plant cell walls and that sort of thing, but it is good for your body because it does help your digestion. A lot of animals will eat plants just in order to help their digestive systems. Fats, these are things, this is lipids as far as the macromolecule that we're dealing with here. Fats are an essential part of a diet as well. These are these long chains, lots of energy stored in fats. Our body uses fat and can break it down as well, but also will store energy as fat. Protein, an important part of, as far as nutrients are concerned, your body uses protein because it is made up of amino acids, and your body needs those amino acids in order to make its own proteins, and so your body will tear them apart and use those individual amino acids to make its own proteins. And this is a picture of the different structures of a protein. And I put peptide bonds here. These are the bonds that link the individual proteins together, or the individual amino acids together. Hopefully you remember that. Now, vitamins, divided into two groups, water-soluble and water-insoluble vitamins. And these are just, these are nutrients that don't have any caloric value or any nutritive value in that regard, but vitamins are essential in that they help to catalyze a lot of the chemical reactions in your body, and therefore are necessary in certain parts of your body. However, your body only needs a certain amount of vitamins, so you can't take way too much just to feel really good. Your body only uses so much. Minerals, these are, think of a mineral, basically these are the items on the periodic table, a lot of them. These are your things like zinc and magnesium and sodium and potassium. These are things that you need in order for your body to function. Iron is another mineral that your body needs. Again, not a digested material so much so, but your body will, for instance, take iron out of meat and then incorporate that into your hemoglobin so that you can better use oxygen. Now, how does digestion work as far as the path that food goes through your body? Well, it enters into the mouth, and in the mouth, that's where the teeth and the tongue and the saliva are working on it in order to pass it down into the esophagus. And from the esophagus, zoom in a little bit here. From the esophagus, it goes into the stomach. The liver's here in front of the stomach, but it doesn't actually go into the liver. Into the stomach, where it is digested further, mechanically and chemically, which we'll mention in a second. And then through the pancreas into the small intestines, where it goes and goes and goes. Your small intestines can be like 15 feet long, lots of tubing. And in the small intestines, this is where most of the nutrient absorption goes on. And then into your large intestine from there, which is this large portion here. And in this large intestine, this is further nutrient absorption. Also, water is removed from your food in order to conserve water, and then it passes out. And this is where we remove solid waste from our body. So in the mouth, a few things. This is where digestion begins, in the mouth. Digestion begins in the mouth with your teeth. You also have salivary glands, and your salivary glands produce something called saliva. Saliva is important because it begins the breakdown of things like starch. There is an enzyme in your saliva called salivary amylase. And amylase takes those individual starch molecules and breaks them in half into glucose. If you just take a piece of bread and put it on your tongue and just leave it there for a while, it will start to taste a little sweet because of all the starches, and potatoes the same way. All the starches there will begin to break down and you'll taste the glucose. Now, your esophagus is next. Your esophagus uses a involuntary muscular movement called peristalsis. Peristalsis, here underlined and circled, starred face. Peristalsis is the involuntary movement of the food down your esophagus, along with gravity, of course, to move food down into your stomach. Now, in your stomach, you have two different kinds of digestion happening. You have chemical and mechanical. The chemical digestion in your stomach involves the chemical hydrochloric acid, or HCl. This is why the pH in your stomach is near 1. There's also an enzyme in your stomach called pepsin, and pepsin begins to break down peptide bonds. It's easy to remember that way. Peptide bonds found in protein. So this is where protein digestion begins, is in your stomach, chemical digestion in your stomach. You can see, we saw this on the picture of the frog and the human stomach, where these pits, and it's in these pits that the juices, the pepsin and the hydrochloric acid and the different things are released into the stomach. Now, also in your stomach is mechanical digestion. Now, remember I talked about smooth muscles. Well, the mechanical digestion is just your stomach literally like acting like a washing machine and kind of jostling the food around until it becomes this like gooey uh, substance with acid and pepsin and saliva and food all mixed together, and that stuff is called chyme. So this time your hamburger and fries kind of looks like a milkshake in your stomach without milk, and not very appetizing. But you don't get the taste at that point, so it doesn't matter. Now, this is where it goes into the small intestine, and enters into this little section called the duodenum, or the duodenum. And in this section here are where a couple of fluids are added to it, and particularly bile from the gallbladder and the liver, which we'll mention shortly. And then the pancreas also secretes something into that food as well. And here's a picture of the small intestine all kind of jostled up. So you have quite a bit of small intestine. And inside your small intestine is where nutrient absorption takes place. And inside your small intestine, there's lots of surface area. And so you can see here in your small intestine, you have what's called you have these folds first. And on each fold are tiny little folds called villi. And so you can see that here. Well, on each villi are further tiny folds called microvilli. So it's like folds, folds, folds. And why are there so many folds? So that all of those nutrients can be absorbed, so that your body can get as much possible nutrients out of the food you're digesting. That's also why your small intestines are so long. Now, in your small intestines, right at the very beginning, your pancreas, which controls insulin and glucagon, and insulin and glucagon are two chemicals that work against one another. Uh, rightly, insulin lowers your blood sugar, glucagon sends it up, and so these two things are working side by side in order to keep your blood sugar levels at the right rate. And if, of course, diabetics who don't have a functioning pancreas, they have to do this on their own. They have to take insulin shots and they have to take in sugar when their blood sugar gets too low. Well, your pancreas also releases a chemical called bicarbonate, and bicarbonate is just like baking soda. And what happens when you add baking soda to, let's say, vinegar? Well, you have this massive kind of reaction where lots of gas is given off, and you're basically left with gas and kind of a salt. Well, in your pancreas or in your small intestine, think about all the food that enters into the small intestine is very acidic. And so your pancreas puts in bicarbonate in order to buffer and neutralize that acid. Well, this causes the release of gas, which is where gas comes from. So if you drink something that is acidic and already has gas in it, like a Coke, and that's why that produces more gas more readily. Your liver and your gallbladder are important too in digestion. Your liver produces bile, and the gallbladder is a storage tank for bile. What does bile do? And this empties directly into your small intestine. Bile breaks down fats. It's a fat emulsification agent. And so people who have had their gallbladder removed have to decrease the amount of fat that they eat. And if they don't, it causes them to be sick because there's too much fat in their food when it's in the digestive tract, and the digestive tract doesn't know how to deal with it. And so this bile will actually break down those fats into manageable chunks that your body can deal with. And then lastly, the large intestine. This is where water is removed from your food, and that basically turns it into solid waste, and it passes on through on out of the body. And so that water is taken back in or taken out so your body can use it. And also there's some absorption that goes on in the large intestines. So that's it on the digestive system. Now on to the excretory system. The function of the excretory system is to get rid of waste, specifically to get rid of nitrogenous waste that is in your body, which is just the word nitrogen with an OUS on it. And nitrogenous waste is in the form of ammonia. Ammonia is a harmful chemical. Where does all this ammonia come from? Well, all of those amino acids that we take in, your body can use part of it, but it can't use the amine group of the amino acid. So what ends up happening is you have a buildup of these amine groups in your body that it can't get rid, that it can't deal with, and so it has to figure out a way to process that and get rid of it safely. And so enter your kidneys. The main parts of your excretory system are your kidneys, and you have your urinary bladder as well, the urethra, which is the tube that takes the urine out of the body, the ureters, these are tubes that connect the kidneys to the urinary bladder, and your liver actually serves a kind of a secondary role in the excretory system. You've heard that your liver, you've probably heard that your liver purifies toxins. Well, one of the toxins that it gets rid of is the ammonia. And the way that it does that is it converts ammonia into a substance called urea, which is then transported to the kidneys and filtered out of the kidneys and excreted as urine. So how does that work? Well, your kidneys do several things. They they filter out this waste out of the blood, and they maintain the blood pH in doing so. Blood pH has to be at about 6.4 is where it normally is, or 7.4, and it needs to stay there. And so your kidneys help to maintain that. But they also regulate the amount of water that's in the blood. So how do they do that? Well, your kidneys are made up of individual units called nephrons. And these nephrons are what do all the filtering, putting in or taking out water and putting it back in. Well, here's a picture of a nephron. Now this can get complicated, but you see the red and the blue, which stands for oxygenated, deoxygenated. And you see these brown structures are the actual kidney structures. And so let's explain what's going on here. And so here, this ball of capillaries is called the glomerulus. Let me just zoom in. Better. And the glomerulus, and again, this is one nephron out of a bunch in your kidneys, and you have two kidneys. And the glomerulus is surrounded by this structure called the Bowman's capsule. And the Bowman's capsule is filtering the blood in that it's taking pretty much everything out of the blood that's not blood, including water. And it's going to go through this series of tubes, and notice what is wrapped in these tubes. Lots of capillaries. And so these capillaries then are serving the function to take, and the kidney and the actual tubes here are putting water back into the blood at the levels that are necessary in order to maintain the normal body functions or homeostasis, while keeping out all of the toxins. And down here you have an area called the loop of Henle. And in this loop of Henle, this is where the water again is finally taken out, and or the amount of water there's amount of water that's left out, obviously, and there's amount of water that's put back in, and this final product is where urine is. And so urine will then make its way up into these tubes, finally into this tube, which is kind of a collecting duct that goes to the ureter, which goes to the urinary bladder, out the urethra, and then out the body. And so this is how the kidneys control blood pH. This is how the kidneys get rid of all of the urea, or all of the nitrogenous waste, which is urea. Your kidneys also convert ammonia to urea in a shorter and a lesser way. But this is how they put water back in normal levels as well. So your kidneys are doing three things again. Important: removing waste, maintaining pH, and regulating the amount of water that is in the blood.